Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the world of rare coins, unbelievable discoveries and the hidden treasures sitting unnoticed in drawers, jars and old family boxes. And today we're stepping into one of the most mind-blowing stories in coin collecting history because we're talking about the 1953 Wheat Penny, a coin that many people look at and think is just another common old cent. But what if I told you that certain rare and error-filled examples of this coin have been rumored and claimed to reach a staggering face value of around $493 million, an unbelievable figure tied to extreme rarity, dramatic minting mistakes, legendary production flaws, and mysteries in the Denver Mint's history that have fascinated collectors, treasure hunters, and historians for decades. So get ready as we go deeper than anyone else into the possibilities, the errors, and the astonishing combination of factors that could turn an ordinary 1953 Wheat Penny into a multi-million-dollar legend. Because this coin isn't valuable just for being old, it's valuable because of what went wrong during its creation, what variations exist, how minting technology changed in the early 1950s, and the incredible chain of mishaps that created a handful of coins unlike any others ever produced. And to understand why this coin could be worth nearly $500 million in certain hypothetical or rumored cases, we need to rewind to 1953, a year when the Denver Mint was pushing massive production numbers, dealing with worn dies, overused machinery, and transitional issues from the booming post-war coin demands, and when the wheat penny design still dominated the landscape of American currency. Yet behind the scenes, numerous complications were arising, creating ripe conditions for dramatic and valuable errors that now make collectors go wild. Because among the most talked about errors associated with the 1953 wheat penny are the deeply desired double die obverse errors, where the word liberty might appear thick, shadowed, doubled or distorted, giving the coin a unique, unmistakable profile that immediately increases its desirability. And then you have the double die reverse possibilities where the wheat stalks appear layered or misaligned, or the lettering in 1 cent shows doubling or separation lines, mistakes stemming from improperly hubbed dies or misaligned equipment during die creation. And then you have the even more dramatic over mint mark errors, where the D mint mark may have been punched over another mint mark type, or over itself due to mispositioning, creating rare variations like D over D north, D over D west or D over D tilted, each drastically raising the coin's desirability because collectors love anomalies that provide physical evidence of human error in the minting process. And then there are the highly valuable off-center strikes where the coin is not centered during the striking process, producing a crescent-like blank surface on part of the coin while the rest of the design remains visible, and the more off-center it is without losing key details like the date, the more valuable it becomes, with extreme off-center strikes being exceptionally rare in 1953 because of how the Denver Mint operated at the time. And then we need to talk about broad strikes where the retaining collar failed and the coin expanded outward during striking, producing a stretched, wide rim appearance that collectors absolutely adore for its odd beauty. And then the clipped planchet coins where a portion of the coin appears bitten off due to misfed metal strips. And then we have die cracks and die breaks, especially along Lincoln's portrait, where lines or raised metal formations appear like lightning streaks across the surface, each reflecting the deterioration of overused dies that the Denver Mint relied on heavily during that era. And these cracks and breaks only increase the uniqueness of each individual coin because no two break patterns are ever identical, creating one-of-a-kind collectibles. And then we reach another level of rarity with the infamous BIE errors where the word liberty splits between the B and the E with a raised die chip forming what looks like a small vertical line turning the word into LIBIERTY, and collectors everywhere know that BIE errors, especially bold ones, are quintessential wheat penny oddities that always bring higher prices. And then there are the mystery transitional planchet errors, where it is speculated that a tiny number of pennies may have been struck on leftover planchets from previous years or different compositions such as bronze planchets intended for earlier years or experimental compositions. And though extremely rare and often unconfirmed, even the possibility of such a transitional composition would skyrocket a coin's value into unimaginable territory. And when you combine all these errors with the historical importance of the wheat penny, the nostalgia of the design, the fact that 1953 was nearing the end of the wheat cent era, and the mythos surrounding the Denver Mint's production inconsistencies, you begin to see how rumors of astronomical valuations like $493 million can emerge, especially if a single coin contains multiple extreme errors stacked on top of each other, something like a double die obverse combined with an off-center strike, combined with a clipped planchet and a dramatic die break, which would create a Frankenstein-like rarity so unique that collectors and investment groups could theoretically engage in unprecedented bidding wars, pushing the price into the realm of legend. and this is what drives the fascination around the 1953 Wheat Penny, because it represents the perfect storm where history, era variety, minting flaws, scarcity and collector passion collide. And behind every rare example lies the possibility that someone today could still discover one in a forgotten jar, old sock drawer, estate sale, box, or flea market pickup, completely unaware that they are holding a potential multimillion-dollar treasure in their hand. And the excitement grows even more when you consider that many 1953-era pennies remain undiscovered because wheat pennies continued circulating for decades before being pulled out of circulation by collectors, meaning undiscovered gems might still be hidden among family heirlooms, coin rolls, or old coffee cans filled with random change, and the sheer thrill of knowing that the next unbelievable discovery could be made by anyone elevates the value of these coins not just financially but emotionally, because owning such a piece isn't just about having metal, it's about holding history, rarity, mystery, and a story that spans generations, and that is why the whispers, claims and exaggerated rumored valuations rise to astronomical heights like $493 million, because in the world of numismatics, the right combination of rarity, errors and provenance can transcend traditional values and enter the realm of priceless collectibles, and this is why the 1953 Wheat Penny stands as a symbol of the extraordinary possibilities hidden within everyday objects, encouraging everyone to search their change, inspect their collections, and never underestimate the power of minting mistakes. And as we continue to explore these rare coins and the fascinating stories around them, make sure you stay connected, keep learning and keep looking through your old coins because you never know when you might discover the next legendary treasure. And if you enjoyed diving deep into the unbelievable potential of the 1953 Wheat Penny and the shocking possibilities of its value, be sure to join us again, stay curious, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible coin stories coming your way. Next, 1946's Wheat Penny. Today we're diving deep, very deep, into a story that feels almost impossible, a story that takes us back to the post-war era, to a time when the United States Mint was busy rebuilding confidence and production after years of wartime change, and hidden within that chapter of history is a small copper coin you might easily overlook in your pocket change. Yet it carries an astonishing rumored value of $49 million. Yes, we are talking about the 1946's Wheat Penny, a coin that most people think of as common and ordinary, but as we peel away the layers, explore the mysteries, examine the errors, and look into the possibilities that make such a coin so extraordinarily valuable, you'll quickly see that the 1946's Wheat Penny isn't just a coin, it's a window into minting history, numismatic secrets, and the unpredictable world where tiny mistakes can lead to massive treasures. So settle in because this single paragraph deep dive is going to take you through every twist, every mishap, every rumor, and every reason collectors have whispered about this unbelievably rare and error-filled penny that has become the stuff of legend in coin collecting circles. And to truly understand how a penny from 1946 could be worth $49 million, we have to begin with the backdrop of American history itself, the lingering effects of World War II, the transition from steel cents back to copper, and the complicated situation the San Francisco Mint found itself in as it rushed to restore output levels. And although the 1946's penny is generally considered common, the version that collectors speculate about, the one that allegedly hit the market with multiple overlapping minting errors, transforms it into a coin of mythical proportions. For starters, let's talk about the raw conditions inside the San Francisco Mint during 1946, a year when equipment was aging, dies were overused, quality control was inconsistent, and staffing was in a transitional phase, all of which are prime ingredients for unexpected mistakes. And this opens the door to errors like double dies, off-center strikes, die cracks, planchet flaws, repunchment marks, and even the possibility of transitional metal mixtures that should not have existed during that time. And while the typical 1946 South Wheat Center is just a copper coin weighing 3.11 grams, made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, rumors among seasoned collectors suggest the existence of a handful of specimens struck on leftover wartime tin-heavy planchets or even experimental alloy planchets. And when coins are struck using a composition that was not officially documented or authorized, their value skyrockets, because such coins not only represent a minting mistake but a glimpse into what might have been test runs, internal experiments, or accidental oversights. And one of the most fascinating details surrounding the 1946's penny with the rumored $49 million valuation is the possibility of a double obverse strike, meaning both sides of the coin may have been struck with obverse dies, or conversely a mule pairing error where the obverse die was matched with an incorrect or misaligned reverse die that belonged to another year or another mint. and mule errors are considered some of the rarest minting mistakes ever recorded, often commanding astronomical prices at auction. And while no publicly documented auction includes a mule-paired 1946 penny, several private collectors and numismatists have speculated about such a coin surfacing in private collections, possibly passed down quietly through generations, and these discussions fuel the legend of the $49 million valuation, further amplified by the fact that wartime and post-war minting years tend to generate a higher volume of anomalies due to rapid shifts in materials, equipment, and production priorities. And on the subject of doubled dies, one of the most frequently cited reasons for extreme valuations, we can imagine a 1946 specimen showing dramatic doubling in the Liberty inscription, the date, Lincoln's profile, or the motto, and dramatic doubling, not minor, not soft, not barely visible doubling, but explosive, crisp, unmistakable doubling, is extremely rare and extremely desirable. And in cases where dramatic doubling appears on a coin that already contains other minting mistakes, the value can multiply exponentially. And now let's move to the mint mark itself, the iconic S that identifies the San Francisco Mint, and this is where another major error possibility emerges, known as the repunched mint mark, or RPM, which occurs when the mint mark is punched into the die more than once in slightly different positions, often resulting in overlapping shapes, shadows, or distinct layering. And while RPMs exist in many years, the idea of a highly pronounced, deeply misaligned, or otherwise extreme repunched mint mark on a 1946 penny is a detail collectors believe could exist in a unique specimen, especially when combined with other errors. And then there is the factor of die cracks, cuds, and breaks, which occur when the die deteriorates, creating raised lines or missing sections on the coin surface, and a coin with a massive die crack running across Lincoln's portrait, or a dramatic cud forming along the rim or wheat stalk, can instantly become a showpiece of minting chaos. But imagine if such a coin also included doubling, an incorrect planchet, a rotated die error, and a mispunched mint mark. The stacking of errors creates a lightning-in-a-bottle scenario that collectors dream about, and the more singular the combination, the more explosive the value, and this leads to one of the most intriguing theories linked to the legendary $49 million valuation, the idea that the 1946 error penny in question may be a multi-error coin, meaning not just one mistake but several independent and rare mistakes all accidentally combined into one coin. And throughout numismatic history, multi-error coins have garnered attention far beyond normal rare coins, because each error on its own is valuable, but together they form an irreplaceable anomaly, a coin that effectively cannot be replicated, and its rarity becomes absolute. And another possibility adding fuel to the valuation is the notion of a rotated die strike, where one side of the coin is not aligned correctly with the other, and in rare extreme cases, the rotation can go beyond 90 degrees, making the coin appear dramatically misaligned when flipped. And rotated die errors are extremely fascinating visually and historically, but when matched with other errors found only on a single documented specimen, the valuation can climb to staggering heights. And in addition to these structural minting errors, collectors often consider the overall condition, surface preservation, strike sharpness, luster, and lack of wear when estimating the value of a rare coin. And hypothetically, if the 1946 multi-error penny was preserved in extremely high grade, perhaps even comparable to gem mint state levels, its value would easily leap into unprecedented territory. And many of the coin world's most shocking sales have occurred when an incredibly rare error coincides with near-perfect preservation, because error coins are often damaged, circulated, scratched, or dismissed by the public before their rarity is recognized, making high-grade survivors extremely scarce. And that rarity is the foundation of the $49 million legend, a perfect storm where the right errors, the right timing, the right minting conditions, and the right preservation all align, creating a coin so rare that its value transcends normal market logic. And now consider the broader fascination of collectors, the excitement surrounding post-war coins, the historical intrigue of 1946 mintage, and the idea that a tiny, common-looking wheat penny might secretly hold a fortune. And you start to understand why the myth of the $49 million 1946 penny has grown into something almost cinematic, a treasure hunt waiting for the right person to check their old change jar or inherited coin box. And beyond the minting errors, some numismatists speculate about undocumented mint experiments conducted during transitional years, including tests of new die steel, tests of alternative planchets, or leftover wartime blanks accidentally mixed into the 1946 production batches. And such events, while not officially recorded, have precedence in other years. for example the famous transitional errors of other decades, so the possibility of a 1946 transitional error is not only plausible but compelling, and collectors love anything that blends mystery, history, and physical evidence, and when you combine all these elements, physical minting errors, historical circumstances, experimental possibilities, and the wild unpredictability of human oversight, you get the foundation for an ultra-rare, once-in-a-lifetime error penny that could command a valuation so high it becomes folklore, and that folklore only adds to the excitement, the speculation, the curiosity that keeps people searching through old jars, old drawers, old books, old wallets, always hoping to find that one coin no one else noticed, the one that slipped into circulation by accident, the one that carries the weight of minting history and the potential of life-changing fortune. And this is why the 1946's Wheat Penny continues to ignite conversations, inspire videos, energize collectors. Next. 1955 Wheat Penny. Today we're diving into one of the most fascinating, mysterious and mind-boggling stories in all of coin collecting, a story that continues to amaze experts and beginners alike, a story centered around a tiny copper coin that most people would overlook without a second thought, but which in rare and extraordinary conditions is believed by collectors to reach a jaw-dropping value of up to $26 million, and that coin is the 1955 Wheat Penny, a coin whose legendary status comes from its stunning errors, accidental variations, and minting mishaps that transformed an everyday penny into one of the most valuable pieces in American numismatic history, and today we're going to take a deep, detailed and non-stop journey into the world of this unbelievable coin, exploring every possible reason why the 1955 Wheat Penny captured the imagination of collectors, how the mysterious doubling phenomenon occurred, how other unnoticed mistakes and minting quirks might dramatically increase its value, why it remains so sought after even decades later, and how the combination of rarity, demand, mystery, and historical importance can elevate a 1-cent piece into the realm of millions. And as we get into this story, you'll discover how accidents at the Philadelphia Mint created one of the most famous error coins in the world, a coin that beginners dream of finding in pocket change and seasoned collectors chase for a lifetime, because the 1955 double die penny didn't just happen randomly. It resulted from the complex and imperfect process of hubbing dies during an era when technology wasn't as controlled or consistent as it is today, and this inconsistency opened the door for dramatic doubling of the obverse design, especially the date and inscriptions, creating staggering visual distortions that have mesmerized collectors for generations. And when you combine that dramatic doubling with the historical context of the mid-1950s United States, the transition in mint procedures and the unique distribution circumstances of the coin, you end up with a story that explains why certain examples, those in pristine condition, those with unusual quirks, those with alternative striking pressures or unexpected planchet characteristics, can skyrocket to values that seem unbelievable at first glance but become understandable when you consider the rarity, demand, and cultural fascination behind this legendary coin, and to truly understand why some collectors believe that certain ultra-rare 1955 Wheat Pennies could reach values as high as $26 million, you have to imagine the perfect combination of circumstances coming together, such as a coin that not only displays the iconic double die obverse but also exhibits more subtle, lesser-known anomalies like die cracks running across Lincoln's jaw or neck, tiny progressive die deterioration lines, minor repunched mint marks on experimental planchets, variations in luster caused by slightly off-composition metal mixes during the copper transition era, or even planchet shifts that cause microscopic distortions on the rim, all of which might be overlooked by untrained eyes but become holy grails for experts who know exactly what signs to search for. And it's important to realize that not every 1955 penny is rare, but the moment you find one with the dramatic doubling where the date appears to be stamped twice in a shadow-like pattern, where the inscriptions appear to be echoing themselves, and where every part of Lincoln's facial profile looks slightly ghosted by another layer of engraving, you are looking at one of the most iconic minting mistakes ever produced, and that error alone skyrockets the value of the coin. But then you add condition, preservation, original mint luster, lack of wear, accidental overpolishing of dies or underpolishing, slight planchet flaws that show mint-generated anomalies and unusual distribution paths, and you suddenly have a coin with a valuation story strong enough to attract major collectors willing to pay mind-bending prices, especially when auction competition heats up and rarity collides with desire, pushing the price of a near-perfect example into legendary figures. And some collectors argue that the true highest-end valuation of $26 million would require not only a flawless double die error but also the presence of exotic traits such as a transitional alloy composition, where the coin might have been struck on a leftover blank from another year, or an experimental alloy planchet left behind unintentionally, or even a highly unusual strike that created extreme details on the wheat stalks, Lincoln's coat and the rim denticles, features that appear only when a coin is struck early using fresh dies combined with full striking pressure, and in the world of collecting, a coin that merges extreme rarity, incredible condition, perfect doubling, extraordinary die anomalies and a one-of-a-kind historical background becomes priceless in the eyes of those who seek the finest known example, and when you add the fact that the 1955 double die penny became famous almost immediately after its release, especially because thousands of error coins accidentally entered circulation through cigarette vending machine packaging rather than traditional mint distribution channels, you get an additional layer of mystique because many early finds came from unsuspecting customers who discovered a strange-looking penny mixed in with their change, a quirk of history that became part of the coin's lore and helped it stand out as one of the most recognizable error coins ever produced. And when a coin becomes famous in pop culture, not just in numismatic circles but also among everyday people who might not know much about rare coins, the demand climbs even higher, which directly influences the market value, especially when collectors with deep pockets want to own the absolute finest example known to exist, meaning that even though the majority of 1955 double die pennies sell for hundreds or thousands depending on condition, the theoretical top-tier specimen, untouched by circulation, accidentally struck under perfect error conditions, preserved in flawless mint red coloration with no carbon spots, no surface abrasions, no signs of handling and no natural oxidation, could push into values far beyond what standard price guides show, because once a coin becomes a competition piece for elite collectors, the sky becomes the limit, and that's exactly how this $26 million figure becomes imaginable, not because every coin sells for that amount, but because the combination of rarity, condition, desirability, intense auction bidding and unique production history creates the possibility of such a valuation for the absolute finest example ever discovered. And when you dig deeper into the minting process of 1955, you discover how easy it was for doubling errors to occur because each working die required multiple hub impressions and any slight misalignment between impressions could create dramatic doubling, and when those mistakes weren't caught immediately, hundreds or even thousands of coins could be struck before the issue was noticed, and while the mint typically destroyed major errors once discovered, this particular set slipped through the cracks and made it into public hands, and as decades passed and most entered circulation, becoming worn, scratched or damaged, only a tiny number survived in exceptionally high grade, and those surviving examples now carry incredible importance within the collecting community, and some collectors even speculate about the existence of unknown varieties, such as secondary double dies from the same year that have never been authenticated or extremely early strikes from the master die that might display more dramatic doubling than any currently known piece, and if such a coin ever surfaced, especially in near-perfect condition, it could immediately become the most valuable penny ever sold, potentially reaching or exceeding valuations in the tens of millions simply because there would be nothing else like it. And when you consider how coin collecting often rewards not only rarity but also story, legacy, error severity, visual appeal, and mystique, it becomes clear why the 1955 wheat penny maintains such legendary status, as every collector dreams of being the one to find that ultimate example, the coin that rises above all others and becomes a centerpiece of numismatic history, a coin whose value reflects not just its metal content but its cultural weight, historic importance, and almost mythical aura. And as we wrap up this deep dive into the incredible world of the 1955 wheat penny and its potential $26 million valuation, I want to thank you for joining this journey and encourage you to keep exploring, keep searching your old jars of coins, keep checking every wheat penny you come across because you never know when one tiny copper coin might change your life forever. And if you enjoyed this exploration into rare coin history, make sure you stay connected, support the channel and get ready for more unbelievable stories from the fascinating world of coins. Next, 1952 D wheat penny, we dive into one of the most fascinating and unexpectedly valuable stories in American coinage, a journey that takes us into the world of tiny details, overlooked minting mishaps, unexpected anomalies, and the mysterious charm of a humble copper coin that somehow managed to inspire rumors, speculation, and extraordinary valuations. And today we're talking about the 1952 D wheat penny, a coin that for most people might appear like an ordinary piece of pocket change, yet collectors whisper about versions of this coin being worth up to $19 million due to the incredible errors, rare combinations, minting mistakes, and odd production circumstances that elevate something so small into the realm of legendary treasure. And whether you've been collecting coins for years or you're just now becoming curious about what makes a particular coin skyrocket in value, This journey into the 1952 Wheat Penny will keep you engaged from start to finish as we explore the layers of possibilities, the kinds of errors that can occur at the Denver Mint, how minting technology of the early 1950s sometimes let small imperfections slip through, and how those imperfections, if they happen to be one in a million, can push a coin's desirability into the stratosphere, creating not only collector demand but also a compelling story that collectors love to chase. Because the truth is that coins are never just metal discs, they're historical artifacts that tell stories about production methods, economic conditions, and the quirks of human oversight, and in this case the 1952 Wheat Penny offers a fascinating opportunity to examine how the smallest deviation from normal production can turn a common date coin into something believed to be worth millions, sparking debates among numismatists and inspiring collectors to inspect their change more carefully than ever before. And while most 1952 pennies are worth anywhere from a few cents to a few dollars depending on condition, the rare and mysterious versions of this coin that contain unique errors or anomalies have been subject to speculation reaching values as high as $19 million because of the belief that certain combinations of misstrikes, doubled details, planchet defects, die deterioration, or other unusual mint events may exist in extremely limited quantities, perhaps only one or two pieces ever produced. And the allure of rarity is one of the most powerful forces in the world of coin collecting, where even a single unique feature can make a collector pay astronomical sums. And when we dive into the specifics of what makes the 1952 Wheat Penny potentially valuable, we find several layers of possibilities, starting with the concept of die errors, which were not uncommon during the Wheat Penny era due to the manual nature of die preparation at the time. Meaning a die could accidentally receive multiple impressions slightly misaligned, resulting in doubled features such as doubling on the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," the date, or the Denver Mint mark itself, and a strong double die on a coin from this era can dramatically raise its value because it proves the coin came from a defective die that produced only a limited number of coins before being corrected or retired, and in the case of the 1952 the speculation revolves around extremely dramatic doubling or tripling errors that may have occurred during the die creation process, resulting in exaggerated details that would instantly catch the eye of a trained collector, and if such a dramatic double die exists in combination with perfect preservation or additional unique errors, collectors argue that the value could reach tens of millions due to unparalleled rarity. And then we also have the intriguing possibility of repunched mint marks, a common issue during the Wheat Penny era when mint marks were manually punched into the dies, and if the worker accidentally misaligned the mint mark the first time, they would punch it again, creating what we call a repunched mint mark or RPM, and some 1952 pennies show minor RPM variations, but the rumors and high valuations come from the belief that there exists an extreme RPM variant where the mint mark was punched in wildly different positions before being corrected, resulting in a visibly layered mint mark effect so dramatic that it would be unlike any other known RPM for this year, and such a dramatic mint mark anomaly, especially in combination with other errors, becomes a once-in-a-lifetime collectible. And then we look at strike errors, another category of mistakes that collectors love because they represent moments when the mint machinery malfunctioned, and examples include off-center strikes, where the design is shifted dramatically to one side because the planchet was not seated properly in the press, and if the off-center strike is large but still preserves the full date and mint mark, its value climbs significantly because collectors want errors that still provide identifying information, making them more historically meaningful. And while off-center pennies from the 1950s do exist, an extreme off-center combined with a double die or RPM would be a spectacular and unique specimen that could reach astronomical valuations simply due to rarity. And then we also consider blockage errors, where a coin gets stuck to the die during minting and imprints its reversed image onto the next planchet, creating an eerie mirrored design that looks unlike any normal coin. And blockage errors from the wheat era are highly sought after because they demonstrate an unusual moment in the minting process that rarely escape detection. And if such a blockage happened on a 1952 penny combined with a dramatic RPM or doubling error, it would elevate the coin into mythic territory. And then we must not forget planchet errors, which happen when the metal blanks intended for coin production have physical defects that were overlooked, such as lamination cracks, clipped planchets, improper alloy mixtures, or foreign object inclusions, all of which can significantly raise collectible value if they are dramatic enough or combined with additional errors. And some collectors speculate about the existence of a 1952 Wheat Penny that was accidentally struck on the wrong planchet entirely, such as a dime planchet, a foreign coin planchet, or a transitional alloy testing blank, and wrong planchet errors can fetch huge sums because they represent extraordinary mint accidents that create coins dramatically different from the norm, and if such a Romplanchet 1952 D penny exists with additional doubling or mint mark anomalies, it becomes the kind of coin that would easily be valued in the multi-million-dollar range. And then there is the possibility of die breaks and cuds, which are raised lumps of metal that appear on coins because the die cracked or broke during production, and dramatic die breaks are highly collectible because they reflect the deterioration of minting equipment, and collectors often nickname specific die break patterns if they resemble shapes, such as animals or objects, making them even more desirable. And if a dramatic die cut appeared on a 1952 D penny alongside other errors, it would again raise the coin's profile significantly. And when we combine all of these things, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, brockages, wrong planchets, lamination issues, die cracks, and unique production anomalies, we see how a single rare specimen could theoretically exist that embodies multiple extreme errors, making it a one-of-a-kind masterpiece of minting chaos. And collectors value uniqueness above all else, because when something is absolutely one of one, it becomes priceless to the right buyer. And this is where the rumored $19 million valuation comes from, because in the world of numismatics, especially at high-end auctions, wealthy collectors will sometimes pay unimaginable amounts simply for the privilege of owning something no one else ever can, and this is why the myth of the multi-million-dollar 1952 D Wheat penny continues to spread, inspiring collectors to inspect their coins closely in hopes of discovering something historic. And even though the vast majority of 1952 D pennies are ordinary, the possibility that one unique specimen exists with an unprecedented combination of mint errors keeps the legend alive, because collectors know that the Denver Mint in the early 1950s was producing coins at high speed to meet post-war economic demand, meaning quality control was sometimes stretched thin, which increases the likelihood that unusual mint errors may have happened without detection. And when we think about how many coins were struck, how many dies were used, and how many opportunities existed for rare combinations of mistakes, it becomes entirely reasonable to imagine that a spectacular error coin could have been produced, slipped into circulation, survived in a collection for decades, and might one day reappear, creating excitement throughout the numismatic world. And this possibility is exactly what drives the value speculation, because in coin collecting the unknown is almost as valuable as the known, and the dream of discovering that one extraordinary coin, the one that breaks all expectations, fuels the enthusiasm of collectors everywhere. And when we look deeper into the culture of coin collecting, we see that stories like the 1952 D million-dollar penny capture the imagination not only because of the monetary value but also because of the sense of adventure involved in searching for something rare, something hidden, something that represents both history and luck. And so as we explore all the potential errors associated with this coin. Next, 1946 Wheat Penny. Today as we dive into another incredible story from the world of rare coins, a world where the smallest pieces of metal can hold the biggest surprises, and where something as ordinary as a penny can suddenly become the centerpiece of a multi-million-dollar mystery. And today we're exploring the astonishing tale of the 1946 Wheat Penny, a coin that some collectors believe could reach a staggering value of $34 million thanks to a mix of intriguing errors, unusual minting anomalies, historical circumstances, and the unpredictable excitement that surrounds rare numismatics. And in this long journey we're going to peel back every layer of possibility, every strange minting mishap, every whisper inside the collecting world, and every detail that might help explain how a penny minted nearly 80 years ago could end up being priced like a masterpiece, a rarity unlike anything else. So get comfortable as we unravel these extraordinary details in one continuous flowing story designed to keep you hooked from beginning to end, because when it comes to rare coins, the story is often just as fascinating as the value, and the 1946 Wheat Penny is no exception, as it sits right at the intersection of post-war America, changing minting technology, unexpected production quirks, and the endless human fascination with treasures that hide in plain sight. So imagine for a moment the world in 1946, the Second World War had just ended, factories were reconverting from military production to civilian manufacturing. The U.S. Mint was shifting from the wartime steel pennies of 1943 back to copper, and every aspect of American life was in a state of transition, and transitions like these often produce mistakes, oversights, and anomalies, which for collectors is exactly the kind of thing that transforms an everyday object into something extraordinary. And with the 1946 Wheat Penny, the possibilities multiply because the mint that year was readjusting machinery, recalibrating dies, replacing worn equipment, and dealing with leftover materials from wartime processes, and these conditions created the perfect environment for obscure, rare, often undocumented errors to slip through unnoticed, only to become legendary decades later. And the first major talking point among collectors concerns the possibility that some 1946 pennies were struck using leftover steel planchets from 1943 or other transitional metals that weren't intended for circulation, and while confirmed examples are exceedingly rare, the mere possibility that steel planchets could have remained in the minting facility due to storage mix-ups or reallocated materials creates speculation that a few transitional errors might exist, and coins like these, if authenticated, could soar to astronomical valuations, especially considering the tiny number of known mixed metal errors from the mid-1940s. And even beyond metal composition, the 1946 wheat penny is also rumored to have doubled. Die varieties that range from dramatic to barely noticeable, involving letters like Liberty slightly stretched, date digits showing faint secondary impressions, or the motto "I in God We Trust" carrying ghost-like duplication under certain lighting, and while many alleged double dies remain debated within the collecting community, the mere presence of controversy and rarity fuels the coin's mystique and adds layers of potential value, because in numismatic scarcity, speculation, and narrative all feed into the final price a rare coin can command. And then there are strike anomalies which often emerge during years of equipment recalibration, such as off-center strikes where the coin design is slightly shifted, leaving empty borders or incomplete impressions, broad strikes where the collar fails to contain the expanding metal, clipped planchets caused by misaligned cutting machinery leaving crescent-shaped bites missing from the rim, or weak strikes where the design fails to fully form due to worn dies or incorrect pressure settings, and each of these errors, depending on severity and uniqueness, can dramatically increase a coin's desirability, especially if the error is particularly crisp, symmetrical, or visually striking, because collectors love errors that look intentional even though they result from equipment malfunction, and when you combine multiple errors in a single specimen, such as a clipped planchet with a double die, or a weak strike on a transitional metal, the rarity compounds exponentially, creating a once-in-a-generation coin. And that's exactly the kind of scenario that fuels rumors of a 1946 wheat penny reaching values in the tens of millions, because extreme rarity, combined with historical timing, combined with near-mythical error possibilities, opens the door to valuations driven as much by legend as by physical attributes. And beyond the errors themselves, the story becomes even richer when we consider the minting practices of the time. Because after the war, the mint faced unusual pressure to increase penny production rapidly as economic activity surged, and a rushed environment often leads to greater numbers of mistakes slipping through quality control, and considering that the minting process back then wasn't nearly as automated or digitally inspected as today, inconsistencies become incredibly plausible, and when inconsistencies exist in tiny numbers and survive decades without being damaged, these coins become numismatic royalty, especially if they surface unexpectedly in old collections, estate sales, or inherited jars where they've been quietly waiting for someone to recognize their significance. And part of the magic behind coins like the 1946 wheat penny is how they combine everyday accessibility with extraordinary hidden potential, because millions of people still have jars of wheat pennies at home, and the idea that a common year like 1946 might hide an ultra-rare, life-changing error feeds a sense of mystery and hope that makes the hunt itself part of the coin's value, and this emotional connection drives demand, and demand drives price, and price inflates legends, creating a cycle where the story becomes bigger every year. And as collectors debate whether the most valuable 1946 errors include transitional planchets, double dies, repunchment marks, strike-through errors where foreign objects get pressed into the design, or die cracks that create raised lines across the coin's surface, forming unusual shapes like lightning bolts or even images that appear accidental but intriguing, each theory adds fuel to the myth and therefore increases the coin's speculative high-end value. And even imperfections in the copper itself, such as impurities in the alloy or inconsistencies in the planchet's thickness, could cause subtle variations that appeal to specialists who study metallurgical anomalies. And while many of these errors may not exist in large numbers, the possibility that one breathtaking example exists, and has not yet been discovered, creates the foundation for multimillion-dollar valuations, especially among passionate private collectors who are willing to pay extraordinary sums for one-of-a-kind numismatic treasures. And part of what pushes a coin from being expensive to being nearly priceless is the presence of mystery, because the unknown is often more powerful than the known. And the 1946 wheat penny thrives on mystery, from inconsistent documentation of minting processes during the transition period, to potential experimentation with leftover planchets, to rumors of prototype strikes, to whispered sightings of coins showing impossible combinations of errors, and whether all these stories are true or exaggerated is almost irrelevant, because in numismatics perception drives value just as strongly as fact, and the perception of the 1946 wheat penny as a coin that might hide an undiscovered mega-rarity contributes to its soaring speculative price. And layered on top of the error possibilities is the fact that the Wheat Penny series itself is highly beloved, representing an era of American history steeped in nostalgia, wartime resilience, and cultural change, and coins tied to meaningful historical eras tend to fetch far higher prices because collectors value not just the metal, but the story it represents. And the 1946 Wheat Penny stands at the symbolic crossroads of war and peace, making it even more appealing as a collector's item. And when you imagine the perfect scenario, a pristine, untouched 1946 wheat penny with a breathtaking error, perhaps a double die combined with a clipped planchet and a transitional metal composition, it suddenly becomes clear how such a coin could command tens of millions, because its rarity would be absolute, its story irresistible, and its demand unstoppable, especially if two wealthy collectors ever found themselves bidding against each other, which in the world of rare coin auctions is exactly how prices skyrocket into legendary territory. And so the idea that a 1946 wheat penny could reach $34 million isn't just about physical features, it's about the power of rarity, speculation, history, mystery, collector passion, and the unpredictable nature of auctions where emotion sometimes overtakes logic and creates results no one could have predicted. And that is ultimately what makes the world of rare coins so fascinating, because every old coin carries a story, but some carry mysteries. And a few carry legends, and among those, the 1946 wheat penny stands tall as one of the most intriguing, captivating, and potentially valuable coins ever discussed, and as collectors continue searching for that ultimate specimen, the legend grows, the excitement builds, and the hope remains alive that perhaps somewhere in a forgotten drawer. Next. 1944 wheat penny. Today we are diving into one of the most unbelievable, mind-bending stories in the entire world of rare coins. A story that takes a simple everyday piece of copper and transforms it into a breathtaking multi-million-dollar treasure. And as always, I'm excited to have you here because today we're uncovering how an ordinary 1944 wheat penny, a coin that millions of Americans once carried in their pockets without a second thought, has been talked about in collector circles as reaching an eye-popping value of $48 million thanks to a combination of bizarre errors, unbelievable minting mistakes, strange historical conditions, and the endlessly fascinating possibilities that surround its existence. And as we peel back the layers, you'll understand how this humble coin became the center of myths, theories, documented errors, and the numismatic obsession that drives collectors to spend decades hunting for that one magical piece. So let's get into the world of metal purity flaws, wartime minting mishaps, die cracks, transitional blends, misstrikes, off-planchet strikes, wrong metal strikes, lamination errors, doubled lettering, mysterious overdates, incorrect planchet feeding, and the dizzying universe of rare coin anomalies that all contribute to building an aura so powerful that collectors whisper about the 1944 wheat penny as though it's a secret relic capable of changing someone's life forever, because when we talk about a penny worth a fortune, we're never just talking about a coin, we're talking about history colliding with pure chance, mechanical errors colliding with human oversight, economics colliding with metallurgy, and rarity colliding with imagination. And the 1944 wheat penny is a perfect example of this extraordinary intersection where the most microscopic details can make the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin worth tens of millions of dollars. And to understand why collectors go wild for this piece, we have to go back to the chaos of the wartime era when the United States Mint was dealing with unprecedented shortages of metal, shifting priorities, frantic production schedules, and constant experimentation to compensate for copper being redirected to weapons, ammunition, machinery, and essential wartime industries. And as a result, the 1943 steel cents were created. But that created a domino effect that rolled into 1944 when copper returned, but not smoothly, leading to one of the biggest numismatic mysteries of all time: how certain leftover steel blanks may have accidentally been struck with 1944 dies, how unusual copper alloys slipped into presses, how recycled shell casings introduced unpredictable metallic compositions, and how misalignment in machinery led to weird strikes that today are considered invaluable. So imagine a scenario where a single leftover 1943 steel planchet gets stuck inside the hopper and then accidentally fed into the press in 1944, receiving a perfect impression with the wrong date and becoming an immediate rarity beyond imagination because only a tiny handful exist today, making them among the most desirable off-metal errors in all numismatic history. And that's only the beginning, because beyond the raw planchet strikes, the 1944 wheat penny is also touched by the mysterious nature of recycled wartime copper, metal salvaged from shell casings that varied slightly in composition depending on origin, manufacturing batch, oxidation state, and storage conditions, meaning that some 1944 pennies show odd metallic characteristics under spectrographic analysis, slight variations in color, variations in luster, unusual hardness readings, or unexpected weight deviations, each of which sparks new theories and fuels collectors' imaginations. And when a coin already has the reputation of possibly existing as a steel error or a transitional anomaly, these additional microscopic differences only amplify excitement and perceived rarity. Because collectors know that even one authentic wrong metal 1944 penny has sold for extraordinary sums, and that fact alone seeds countless stories, myths, and rumors about the theoretical perfect specimen, the one flawless example that still hasn't surfaced publicly, a coin so rare and so pristine that its auction value could theoretically climb into the tens of millions of dollars. And then there are the die varieties, the little quirks of minting technology that turn ordinary copper discs into numismatic puzzles, including doubled dies where the lettering Liberty or I in God We Trust appears slightly shadowed or doubled because the die shifted minutely during its creation, and those doubled dies, when paired with a rare planchet, could produce an error-on-error combination so exotic that collectors would line up to outbid one another because combinations of errors multiply rarity exponentially. And even more astonishing are the coins displaying die cracks, raised spidery lines caused by fractures in overused or stressed dies, and when these fractures appear on special coins like the speculative Romplanchet 1944 wheat penny, they create a distinctive appearance that sets that coin apart even further from all known examples, turning it into a kind of numismatic fingerprint that exists nowhere else in the world. And in a market where collectors obsess over one-of-one items, a coin with multiple layered quirks instantly becomes priceless. And let's not forget the lamination errors caused by impurities or weak bonding in the metal that create peeling, flaking, or bubbling textures across the coin's surface. And while a lamination error may seem like a flaw, the truth is that flaws from this era often serve as historical evidence of material shortages, sloppy metal refining, and rushed production, all of which add to the storytelling value, because a collector doesn't just buy the physical coin, they buy the story attached to it, the historical chaos that led to its creation, and the sheer improbability of its survival, especially considering how many pennies circulated heavily during the 1940s when the American economy was strained and every coin was used extensively by millions of people, making the survival of any high-grade example astonishing. And this is where condition plays an enormous role, because if you imagine an ultra-rare 1944 wheat penny struck on a leftover steel blank or containing an unusual alloy or showing a double die or carrying a dramatic off-center strike, and then imagine it surviving almost 80 years without scratches, corrosion, cleaning damage, or wear, preserved in nearly perfect condition, that coin instantly becomes a holy grail rarity, the type of discovery that would energize collectors, auction houses, historians, and investors alike. And that's where the speculation of enormous values begins, because when something is not only rare but historically significant, visually striking, scientifically interesting, and surrounded by myths and theories, its price becomes limited only by how badly the world's top collectors want to possess it. And collectors are emotional, passionate individuals who sometimes spend decades dreaming of a particular coin, and when the chance finally arrives to own it, they are willing to offer astonishing sums that nobody outside the hobby could imagine paying for a penny. Yet this is exactly how extraordinary values emerge, and this is how the 1944 wheat penny became associated with multi-million-dollar possibilities, because between Romplanchet strikes, leftover steel blanks, transitional errors, shell casing metallurgy anomalies, double dies, die cracks, lamination flaws, off-center mistrikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, and the tiny handful of specimens believed to exist in elite private collections, each with its own unique traits, the coin has grown into a legend, a symbol of how chaos and chance in the minting process can produce something so rare that owning it becomes a lifelong dream for collectors. And when you match that rarity with historical relevance from the wartime era and the dramatic differences between 1943 steel cents and 1944 copper cents, you get a recipe for endless fascination. And this fascination translates into extraordinary monetary value, because stories drive markets, rarity drives competition, competition drives bidding wars, and bidding wars drive price explosions. And the more collectors talk about the possibilities, and the more exotic the rumors become, the higher the perceived ceiling rises, which is how a coin once worth a single cent can climb into mythical multimillion-dollar territory. And when you consider all of these factors together, historical context, unusual metallic compositions, leftover steel planchets, rare transitional strikes, doubled dies, lamination errors, misalignment mistakes, die deterioration, production inconsistencies, and the fact that most rare specimens have never been publicly sold, creating unlimited speculation, you begin to understand how a 1944 wheat penny could reach a valuation as massive as $48 million in the eyes of collectors who see it not only as a coin but as a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, a piece of history, an artifact of wartime urgency, and a symbol of numismatic wonder. And by the time you finish exploring all the mysteries surrounding it, you realize that the true value lies not only in its metal but in the story it tells, the imagination it inspires, and the possibility that somewhere in someone's old coin jar or inherited drawer there might still be an undiscovered specimen waiting to shock the entire world. So if you enjoyed this deep dive into the incredible world of rare coins and unbelievable minting mysteries. Next, the 1946 wheat penny, we dive into another unbelievable and captivating story from the world of rare coins, a world where something as small and ordinary as a 1-cent piece can transform into a jaw-dropping multi-million-dollar treasure. And today we are exploring the incredible tale of the 1946 wheat penny that some collectors claim could be worth as much as $11 million because of its mysterious errors, unusual striking conditions, unexplained anomalies, and the fascinating possibilities that surround it. So settle in and get ready, because this story goes deep into the history, the minting process, the unpredictable world of coin errors, and the extraordinary circumstances that can take a penny minted nearly 8 decades ago and elevate it into the realm of legendary numismatic value. And as we begin this journey together, we welcome you to a space where every old coin has a story, every scratch has a meaning, and every minting mistake has the potential to rewrite what we think we know about value, rarity, and the hidden wealth that might be sitting unnoticed in drawers, jars, and old family boxes around the world. Because the 1946 wheat penny is more than just a coin, it is a time capsule of American history, minted right at the end of World War II, a period where metal compositions were changing, minting equipment was worn and overused, and the United States Mint was under immense pressure to produce billions of coins quickly to keep up with an economy shifting back from wartime to normal production. And all of these conditions created the perfect storm for errors, the kind of errors that today, when discovered, can push the value of a coin to astronomical levels. And when we talk about a penny being worth $11 million, it sounds outrageous, unbelievable even, but in the coin world the rarest errors can command prices that seem impossible. And that is exactly where the 1946 wheat penny enters the spotlight, because among the millions of perfectly normal copper pennies struck that year, there are whispers, stories, rumors, and even sightings reported by collectors of extremely rare examples that contain multiple errors stacked on top of each other, the kind of minting anomalies that should not exist, yet somehow slip through the presses unnoticed, surviving decades untouched. Until one day someone picked up an ordinary-looking old penny and wondered why something about it didn't look quite right. When we talk about the kinds of errors that might push a 1946 wheat penny into the multi-million-dollar range, we have to explore the intricate world of minting mistakes, beginning with double dies, one of the most famous and valuable categories of errors, created when the design on the die shifts ever so slightly during hubbing, leaving the finished coin with doubled letters, doubled dates, or doubled features that collectors go wild for because doubled dies are unmistakable, striking, and highly prized. And if a 1946 wheat penny surfaced with strong doubling on the date or on the word liberty or on the motto "In God We Trust," it would immediately stand out from the rest and attract intense collector interest. But imagine instead a double die so dramatic, so bold, that it covers the entire obverse or reverse of the coin, the kind of dramatic doubling seen in the most famous error pennies in history. And suddenly the idea of a multi-million-dollar valuation does not seem so far-fetched, especially if the coin also contains other unusual traits layered on top of that. Another category of errors that could push a 1946 penny into unbelievable value territory is off-metal striking, meaning the penny was accidentally struck on a planchet meant for another coin, something that happened during the chaotic post-war production years because the mints were juggling leftover wartime materials, experimental metal compositions, and inconsistent quality control. And if even one 1946 penny was struck on a leftover steel planchet from 1943, or on a foreign coin planchet that occasionally found its way into mint batches, that would instantly create a world-class rarity worth millions, because off-metal errors are not just unusual, they are nearly impossible. especially from that specific year, making them the holy grail for collectors who understand how these anomalies occur and how seldom they survive. And then there is the possibility of transitional errors, coins minted with the wrong composition for the wrong year, which famously created the legendary 1943 copper penny and the 1944 steel penny, each worth enormous sums because they were never meant to exist, and while the 1946 penny is widely known to be a standard bronze composition, what if a strange transitional planchet found its way into the presses, creating a single example with a different weight, different metal, or partially mixed alloy resulting from leftover wartime materials caught in the machinery, and this alone would create an error of extraordinary significance. But the possibilities do not stop there because the minting equipment in 1946 was under intense strain, producing billions of coins, and when dies become worn or misaligned, they produce even more unusual errors such as die cracks, cuds, retained interior die breaks, and shattered die patterns, all of which can create dramatic raised lines or missing design elements on the finished coin. And if a single 1946 penny emerged with an enormous die break across the obverse, a huge cut obliterating part of the rim, or a dramatic crack running through Lincoln's portrait, collectors would immediately take notice, because dramatic die break errors are visually stunning, instantly recognizable, and highly desirable, and when combined with other rare traits, they could multiply the value exponentially. There is also the intriguing possibility of misstrikes, such as off-center strikes where the design is shifted heavily to one side, broad strikes that appear stretched and rimless, double strikes where the coin was struck twice in different positions, and even triple strikes, which are incredibly rare and almost always command massive premiums. And if a 1946 wheat penny surfaced showing a chain of multiple misstrikes, each more dramatic than the last, it would become one of the most valuable minting mistakes of its era, and collectors would compete fiercely to own it. Another source of extreme value is the possibility of a mule error, which occurs when the obverse from one coin is accidentally paired with the reverse die meant for a different denomination, something that is so rare it almost never happens, but when it does the coins become instant million-dollar treasures, and while there is no confirmed 1946 mule penny, the idea that a mismatched die could have slipped into the production line during the chaotic post-war conditions is not impossible, and if one ever surfaced it would shock the entire numismatic world. In addition to these physical minting errors, collectors also consider the coin's condition, and if an error coin from 1946 survived in pristine, mint state condition with full details, blazing luster, sharp strike, and no signs of circulation, it could multiply the value dramatically, because the combination of rarity and condition is what drives the most intense bidding wars at auctions. And in the case of the 1946 wheat penny, a coin with a once-in-a-lifetime error that somehow remained untouched for nearly 80 years would be the kind of discovery that sparks headlines across the world. Another factor that could contribute to such an enormous valuation is the role of provenance, meaning the history of ownership, and if a 1946 wheat penny with an extraordinary error was discovered in a famous collection, a mint hoard, or among coins preserved by a retired mint employee, this backstory would have tremendous value, because collectors love owning coins with a story, coins that connect them to history, and coins that have traveled through time with mystery and significance. And then there's the psychological and emotional factor that often influences record-breaking numismatic sales, the desire for collectors to own something truly unique, something no one else in the world has, and when a coin like this appears at auction, even if its true market value is uncertain, determined bidders can push the price to unbelievable heights, simply for the honor of owning the only example of its kind. All of these possibilities, dramatic double dies, off-metal strikes, transitional errors, die breaks, misstrikes, mule pairings, pristine condition, and historic provenance, come together to form the mythos surrounding the legendary 1946 wheat penny that some believe could be worth as much as $11 million, and whether such a coin has been publicly confirmed or not, the excitement, the mystery, and the chase are what keep collectors searching through old jars, inherited boxes, antique shops, flea markets, and estate sales, hoping to find that one penny that defies logic and changes everything, because the world of rare coins is full of surprises, and history has shown again and again that extraordinary discoveries often come when least expected, hidden in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone curious enough to take a closer look. And as we wrap up this deep dive into the possibilities, the errors, the mysteries, and the incredible potential value behind the 1946 wheat penny, remember to stay curious, keep searching, and always take a second look at those old coins, because you never know when you might stumble upon the next multi-million-dollar treasure hiding in plain sight. And if you enjoyed this incredible journey into the world of rare coins, make sure to like, share, and and subscribe so you never miss another fascinating story about hidden wealth, unexpected discoveries, and the unbelievable value that tiny pieces of history can hold. Next. 1951 Wheat Penny. We dive into another incredible journey into the world of rare coins, surprising discoveries, and the kind of jaw-dropping stories that keep collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday viewers glued to the mystery of what could be hiding right inside their pocket change, because today we're taking a deep look into one of the most talked about coins in the collecting community. A coin that on the surface looks simple, ordinary, and easy to overlook, yet according to rumors, collector claims, speculative market talk, and mysterious discoveries, some examples of the 1951 Wheat Penny have been said to be worth up to $15 million because of the errors, mistakes, striking anomalies, metal composition inconsistencies, and strange minting possibilities that make people wonder whether extraordinary value could be hiding behind a coin nearly everyone has seen at one time or another, and that's exactly why so many people love this topic, because the idea that an everyday coin from decades ago, a coin minted in enormous numbers, could hold secrets known only to a lucky few creates excitement, curiosity, and a sense of wonder that continues to grow as more collectors share stories, discoveries, and theories about what might make a simple wheat penny so unbelievably valuable. So let's start from the beginning and talk about how the 1951 wheat penny came to be, because the early 1950s were a busy time for the U.S. Mint, producing billions of Lincoln cents as the nation expanded, industries grew, and the demand for small denomination currency stayed high, meaning the minting process was non-stop, heavily reliant on die maintenance, constant changes in die states, occasional oversights, and a variety of unintentional mistakes that could easily slip through. And when we look at the 1951 wheat penny, minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, with billions combined, we can begin to understand why some rare errors are extremely sought after, and why a few examples have become the stuff of legend, with collectors claiming certain pieces exhibit anomalies so unusual that they become priceless. And this leads us into the world of doubled dies, die cracks, die chips, repunched mint marks, lamination errors, off-metal strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, weak strikes, filled dies, ghosting effects, transitional possibilities, and the increasing speculation surrounding rare off-metal compositions that might exist from wartime leftover blanks or misfed planchets, and each of these forms the foundation for how a coin rumored to be worth $15 million could generate so much hype, because when collectors think about extremely valuable cents, their minds often jump to legendary coins like the 1943 copper penny or the 1944 steel penny, coins whose value comes from accidental leftover planchets from wartime metal transitions. And that's where the 1951 wheat penny becomes even more fascinating, because some believe that a tiny number of these pennies may have been struck on unexpected planchets left over from other years, and while the mint officially states such occurrences would be nearly impossible in 1951, decades of documented off-metal errors from other years raised the question of whether something similar could have occurred, and so the speculation continues, especially as stories circulate of collectors finding unusually heavy or strangely toned examples, coins with magnetic responses, coins whose weight seems slightly off, or coins that show characteristics inconsistent with standard copper alloy cents of the era, leading to theories that these might be the extremely rare, possibly unique anomalies that could justify valuations reaching tens of millions of dollars, because rarity drives the market, and when rarity is paired with mystery, speculation intensifies, which is exactly what happens with the 1951 wheat penny and the notion that a handful of error coins exist with characteristics so unique that their value becomes limited only by what the highest bidder is willing to pay, and this leads us deeper into specific errors, like the double die possibilities, because although no major double die obverse or reverse is officially recognized for 1951, that hasn't stopped collectors from claiming the existence of prototype dies or experimental hubbing attempts that may have produced extremely minor double dies overlooked by grading companies for years, and some say that pieces with extreme doubling on the date, Liberty, or in God We Trust may exist, perhaps struck during a transition in die creation techniques, and if such an example surfaced with clear dramatic doubling, it could instantly become one of the world's most famous pennies, especially if tied to rumors of only a single known surviving piece, which would push its value into mythical territory, the kind of value people talk about for generations. And then we come to die cracks and die breaks, extremely common on mid-century cents due to the intense use of dies. But what if some of the 1951 die cracks formed shapes or patterns so dramatic that collectors viewed them as unique signature errors, like coins featuring massive die breaks forming dramatic raised lines across the fields, or die chips creating unusual shapes in Lincoln's hair? or states that appear as extra details on wheat stalks. And when such patterns emerge in only one known example, collectors begin assigning extraordinary value. Because the concept of a one-of-one error coin is irresistible, and then there's the question of planchet flaws, especially lamination errors, where impurities, gas bubbles or incomplete bonding during the metal preparation process create peeling surfaces, fissures or unusual textures on the finished coin, and if a lamination error intersects major design elements like the date or Lincoln's portrait, some collectors argue that the resulting coin becomes a dramatic showcase piece, something that tells the story of how imperfect the minting process truly was, and dramatic lamination errors have sold for high prices before, so combining that with the hype around 1951 wheat pennies only fuels the imagination further, especially when collectors speculate about multi-layer lamination separations or extreme peeling that exposes raw metal beneath, creating patterns that are unlike anything else known for the year, driving the excitement ever higher. And then of course we must talk about the possibility of repunched mint marks, because the Denver and San Francisco mints frequently produced RPM errors during the wheat penny years due to the manual punching process used at the time, which means that D/D, S/S, D over S or S over D possibilities spark intense interest, and although major RPM varieties are known for 1951 D and 1951 S, some collectors believe there are still undiscovered pieces with dramatic, extremely bold repunching that has yet to be authenticated or publicized, and if someone were to uncover a previously unknown, incredibly strong RPM variety that only exists on perhaps one or two coins, that could easily become a multi-million-dollar coin under the right circumstances, especially if graded at an extremely high level, like MS-68 or MS-69, where the survival estimates are already tiny. And then there's the idea that the mint occasionally struck coins on leftover foreign planchets or misfed metal blanks intended for other denominations, which is fully documented in other years, and some collectors insist that the 1951 wheat penny might include a tiny handful of these foreign or wrong planchet strikes, such as coins struck on bronze blanks intended for Central American coins, or thinner brass planchets, or off-metal compositions that weigh noticeably different from standard cents, and if such a coin exists and is well documented, the value could indeed reach extraordinary levels, perhaps even the rumored $15 million if the coin is unique, dramatic, and authenticated by major grading services, because rarity combined with mystery creates the perfect storm for staggering valuations. And then we must consider the role of condition rarity, because although billions of 1951 pennies were minted, extremely few survive in ultra-high mint state grades, especially MS-68 or above, and those that do exist are almost always carefully preserved examples that survived by chance rather than intention. And if someone found a flawless, blazing red 1951 wheat penny in a roll, a collection, or an estate hoard, and if that coin turned out to be a unique top-pop specimen, the bidding wars could escalate dramatically, because collectors chasing registry sets will pay extraordinary sums for the top-graded coin in any series, and while 15 million would be extreme, some argue that if this top-pop piece also included a dramatic error such as a double die, off-metal composition, or extraordinary planchet anomaly, the combined rarity could push the coin into the realm of priceless collectible artifacts, and the legends surrounding such possibilities continue to grow, fueled by rumors from old-time collectors who claim they once saw such a coin decades ago but failed to acquire it, or stories from estate sales where unusual pennies vanished before being properly documented, or tales from retired mint workers who spoke of strange occurrences in the production process that were never officially recorded, and these stories feed into the mythos of the 1951 wheat penny worth $15 million, creating an unstoppable wave of curiosity and speculation, drawing in more people who wonder if maybe, just maybe, they could be the one to find the next legendary coin hidden away in a drawer, a jar of old change. Last. Now we dive into one of the most surprising and captivating discoveries in the world of coin collecting, a world where a tiny piece of copper can unlock extraordinary stories, unimaginable value, and mysteries that continue to fascinate collectors and treasure hunters around the globe. And today we're exploring the incredible tale of the 1945 wheat penny, a coin from the final year of World War II that has stunned collectors with examples rumored to reach an extraordinary value of $9 million. Not because of gold, silver, or any rare metal, but because of the extraordinary errors, unusual minting mishaps, and mysterious anomalies that have elevated certain surviving specimens of this coin far above the ordinary wheat penny lost in drawers, jars, pockets, and old forgotten boxes. And as we start this incredible journey, imagine holding a small, worn copper coin produced during a time when the world was desperate for hope, a coin struck while the war was nearing its end and America was preparing for peace, yet amid the billions of standard pennies minted in that year, rare and stunning mistakes were created, mistakes that today transform a simple 1-cent piece into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And as we explore every detail, every flaw, every unusual die issue, and every mysterious combination of mint errors that may have happened during the production process, you'll begin to understand why collectors chase these rare survivors with such passion, and why a specific 1945 wheat penny, under the right conditions, could command a value so legendary it shakes the numismatic world and inspires dreams of finding fortune in pocket change. Because when you explore coins like these, you step into the hidden world of minting chaos, unexpected outcomes, and the astonishing luck that allows a flawed coin to survive circulation long enough to be discovered decades later by someone who recognizes its true value. And with the 1945 wheat penny, the story begins. With the sheer scale of wartime minting, when the U.S. Mint was under intense pressure to produce enormous quantities of coins to support the booming wartime economy, and with millions of coins pouring through presses every day at breakneck speed, the possibility of mistakes skyrocketed, from double dies created by imperfect hubbing, to off-center strikes caused by misaligned planchets, to lamination flaws formed because of impurities in the metal, to repunched mint marks resulting from manual adjustments, and even the extremely rare but legendary transitional errors, the kinds of mistakes that shouldn't exist but sometimes appear when leftover materials, dies, or experimental planchets from previous years accidentally enter the production line. And these possibilities introduce the idea that a rare 1945 wheat penny might have been struck on a leftover steel planchet from 1943, or perhaps on a foreign coin planchet used during the war, or even with a misaligned die that produced distorted lettering, or a doubled profile of Lincoln, or a ghost-like shadow doubling effect on the date or mint mark that collectors chase relentlessly. But one of the most valuable possibilities is the dramatic double die obverse, a type of error where the date, the word liberty, or the motto appears doubled because of a misalignment during the die creation process. A type of error that has created many of the most expensive pennies in history, like the iconic 1955 double die penny. And if such an extreme doubling exists on a 1945 wheat penny, with perfectly visible doubling under magnification, clear separation between the doubled elements, and no damage that would confuse it with machine doubling, then that alone could push the value into the millions, especially if the coin is in high grade, because surviving errors typically have extensive wear from decades in circulation. And another extraordinary possibility involves a 1945 wheat penny struck on the wrong planchet entirely, a mistake known as a wrong planchet or off-metal strike, which occurs when a blank metal disc intended for another denomination or foreign contract coin accidentally enters the press. And the U.S. Mint, especially during wartime, was known to produce coins for other countries, meaning planchets of various sizes and metals were present in minting facilities, and if even one of these were fed into the penny press, the resulting error coin would be dramatically different in weight, color, and metallic composition, creating a coin so unusual that it defies expectations and commands astronomical prices at auction. And imagine a 1945 penny struck on a silver dime planchet or a leftover steel planchet or a foreign bronze planchet, producing a coin that feels and looks different from the ordinary copper cents. A coin that would be so rare that collectors would battle fiercely to possess it because of its uniqueness. And when you combine such an error with strong sharp details, full lines on Lincoln's coat, clear wheat stalks on the reverse, and minimal wear, the price could easily reach the legendary $9 million range, especially when collectors consider the historical context, the rarity, and the fact that no two major mint errors are exactly alike, which gives each of them a near-mythic status in the collecting world. And another error that boosts the value of a 1945 wheat penny dramatically is a perfectly centered but fully rotated reverse, known as a rotated die error, where the front and back of the coin do not align correctly, making the reverse appear twisted in relation to the obverse. And while small die rotation is relatively common, an extreme rotation of 90 degrees or more is incredibly rare and highly sought after, especially in older wheat penny years, because such dramatic rotations indicate a severe minting malfunction. And collectors place immense value on coins that display flaws so dramatic that they almost seem intentional, even though they are purely accidental marvels created by the chaos of high-speed wartime production. And then there is the possibility of die cracks and cuds, small or large raised areas caused by pieces of the die breaking off, forming thick lines or blobs of metal on the coin's surface. And some collectors seek out coins with large dramatic cuds because they visually demonstrate the violent stress and fatigue that minting dies endure. And when a cud or die break occurs on a popular series like the wheat penny, and especially on a date as widely collected as 1945, the rarity increases drastically, and if such a cut is paired with another dramatic error like off-center strike or doubling, the value jumps again, creating a combination error that collectors rarely see, and rarity combined with desirability is the force that drives coins into multi-million-dollar territory. And when collectors consider the historical context of 1945, the coin's potential role in the post-war economy, and the symbolic nature of Lincoln's portrait during a time when America was redefining its future, the emotional value merges with the physical rarity, enhancing its desirability even further, and another angle that fuels the legendary value of certain 1945 pennies lies in the condition, because condition is king in numismatics, and the higher the grade, the higher the value, especially for coins that are already rare mint errors, and while most 1945 pennies are heavily circulated, scratched, worn down, and darkened from decades of handling, a truly pristine specimen with sharp details, perfect luster, and minimal marks becomes a miracle of preservation, a coin that somehow survived pockets, purses, cash registers, dirt, moisture, and countless hands, emerging decades later as though it were just minted. And if such a miracle example also happens to contain one of the dramatic mint errors collectors dream of, then its value skyrockets beyond imagination, and this is where auction battles begin, where collectors and investors engage in fierce competition, each one determined to secure a unique piece of American history, and the emotional impact of a coin like this cannot be underestimated because when something so small carries so much historical significance, rarity, and sheer beauty, it becomes more than a collectible, it becomes a treasure that transcends time, a relic of a moment when America was undergoing profound change, and the idea that a normal-looking 1945 wheat penny found in a jar or an old box could actually be a multimillion-dollar error is what fuels the excitement and hope of collectors everywhere, lighting the spark that inspires people to check their own coins, search their inherited collections, or examine any wheat penny that appears slightly unusual, because any small anomaly could be the key to unlocking millions, and the possibilities range from misaligned dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes where the coin expands beyond the collar, clipped planchets where a piece of the metal is missing from the edge, transitional errors where leftover steel planchets from 1943 or shellcase planchets from 1944 could have been mistakenly used, experimental compositions tested during the wartime shortages, or even highly unusual error combinations that only occur once in an entire generation of minting. And the intrigue surrounding these rare possibilities creates a magnetic pull for enthusiasts who dream of discovering one of these ultra-rare coins, because the idea that a tiny sliver of metal containing a minting mistake could turn into a multi-million-dollar piece of history is one of the most thrilling aspects of numismatics.